Rachel Holt for NESN.com, and welcome to our fantasy football podcast ahead of week 1 of the regular season. Thanks for tuning in. I'm joined by Adam Meyer, Fox Sports fantasy contributor. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Rachel. I appreciate that.
Of course. We've been chatting with your buddies over at Fox Sports this whole preseason, John Halpin and Ryan Fowler, and now it's finally here. The NFL regular season kicks off on Thursday, so they're bringing in the big guns, and we get to talk to you too.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that we're a big four-man team over at Fox Sports, and I know that we've been stretched across many different platforms, social media and answering questions on the fantasy chats on our website. So, yeah, the more we get out there, the better. So we really appreciate you guys over at NESN giving us a platform as well.
Of course, there's a great fantasy football tab on Fox Sports. We've been looking at it, and let's help the people out here. As of right now, every fantasy owner, they have a clean slate. It's a beautiful thing. It's rare. It doesn't last long. Let's try to help them and make sure things run smoothly at the beginning at least. So as far as the week 1 matchups go, Adam, if you could tell me, which ones should fantasy owners be keeping a close eye on?
Oh, man, it's really tough in week 1 because obviously you want to try to figure out what defenses you need to target in the fantasy world. So for me, the best way I do that, I look at Vegas. They actually, they do a lot of homework there, getting their numbers together, and I look for high over-unders. I look for, large spreads between the two teams. And right now, the biggest over-unders you're looking at, you got the Colts against the Lions is a good one to find some targets there. Obviously, anything in the 50s, so they're around 51 total points. Look at other ones around here. You got Pittsburgh and Washington hovering around 50. Oakland and New Orleans. New Orleans' head defense was like Swiss cheese last year, and I think that if the Raiders can do anything offensively, it's going to be worth it. So anyone in Oakland, I think, is going to be a good buy there. People were also really big on Colby Fleener as possibly a top 5 tight end being in New Orleans, kind of breaking away. And now that you have him out there in New Orleans, maybe you kind of could have the Drew Brees, Colby Fleener connection like we had with Jimmy Graham. And before that, Marcus Colston, people might remember, Colston was actually listed as a tight end his first year playing in fantasy football, so before he moved to wide receiver. So it seemed like Drew Brees always made the tight end a valuable commodity there in New Orleans. And then now that Fleener's gone, we're not going to see what Dwayne Allen can do by himself in Indianapolis. So tight ends on both ends of the spectrum there, one in New Orleans, one in Indy. I think those are some good buys if you want to wait. Maybe you're not able to get Gronk in the first round of your draft at tight end. So they won't give Gronk-type numbers, but they'll definitely contribute on a decent level there.
Okay, I have to ask you about Gronk because we are the New England Sports Network after all, and it's been a big question for the Pats. He's usually a go-to pick at tight end, no questions asked. This year with Martellus Bennett in the mix in New England, do you think this affects Gronk's fantasy value?
I wouldn't say it affected too much, but I don't know if this name is considered a curse word in the Boston area, but I'm going to compare it to when Gronk and Aaron Hernandez are on the same team. Both guys there put up, they got at least 100 targets. Both at least had 900 receiving yards. Hernandez was 10 touchdowns light of Gronk. Still having 7 touchdowns as a backup tight end was nothing to sneeze at there. And I think that in week 1, where they were teamed up, they both had 6 catches, both had around 60 yards, both found the end zone. So I think with Garoppolo there at quarterback, younger quarterbacks tend to want to check down a lot, go to the more reliable options there. And being that, Deion Lewis is out, if they don't rely on Garrett Butler in the backfield, looking to pass the ball around, I think that if I'm a defensive coordinator facing Patriots, I'm going to say, okay, kid, your running game is going to be very shallow there. If we put 2 guys on Gronk, let's see what you can do against us. So I think that can be huge numbers for Martellus Bennett this year.
Okay, good to know. And, while we're on the subject of New England and the quarterback situation over there, what are your thoughts on Jimmy Garoppolo and the Patriots? How do you think he'll do in the week 1 matchup against the Cardinals?
Yeah, man, I really think that he couldn't get a more tougher opponent in week 1. It's tough to, kind of fill in that role, especially when you got a Hall of Famer you're filling in for 4 weeks. But at least he knew well in advance that it was going to be him getting the job. I mean, I think you could say maybe around May, maybe at latest around July, that Brady wasn't going to be there for the first 4 games. So it's not like it's a surprise. Not like if you're in Philadelphia or you're in Minnesota or you're in Dallas where you had only a couple weeks to react and kind of figure out that, hey, I'm going to be the guy here. What's the game plan? New England's known for a while, and with Belichick there, if you give him more than a week to prepare for a game, I'm sure he's going to come out with a great game plan. So with them having a couple months to prepare for Arizona, I think that he will not put Garoppolo into a position to fail too much. But, man, that Arizona defense is tough. And you saw when that game first came out on the line, it was an over-under of 51 with the Patriots as a 1-point favorite. But since the news of obviously, Deion Lewis being on the PUP list for 8 weeks and Brady being suspended for the first 4 games, now Arizona is a 6-point favorite with an over-under of 47.5. So that's basically a projection of, 27 to 20 on both sides of the ball. So if they think that the Patriots are only going to score 20 points, that's not looking good for Garoppolo in week 1.
There's also been some other questions at the quarterback position on some unfortunate injuries this preseason. Teddy Bridgewater and Tony Romo. So we have Sam Bradford traded to Minnesota and Carson Wentz was named the starter for week 1 in Philadelphia. How does this impact the fantasy football world?
Oh, man, big changes around the NFL in the past couple of weeks for sure. With, Bradford moving to Minnesota. I mean, we're 5 days away from the first Sunday of the NFL, and the Vikings still don't know who to start week 1 from, whether it's Sean Hill, whether it's Sam Bradford, whether it's a combination of the two. All you know is that Adrian Peterson's going to get the ball a lot. You know that when he had Christian Ponder back in 2011, rushed for over 2,000 yards there. I think with him, it's basically going to be give Peterson the ball as many times as he can, and hopefully that he can stay in the game. They got Tennessee week 1, so not a tumultuous defense, but I still think the offense is going to revolve heavily around Adrian Peterson. Even before Bridgewater got hurt, I figured it was going to revolve around AP there. When we did our fantasy rankings, I know people wanted to put David Johnson 1, maybe Todd Gurley number 1 among running backs, but I stuck with Adrian Peterson there because I knew that as long as Teddy Bridgewater was at the helm, they still were going to have this offense revolve around Peterson. So I think Peterson's going to get his touches. He's probably going to get close to 300 in the season again. So I think that for him, if anything, it's going to impact Stefon Diggs and Laquan Treadwell. Because I know people were really big on Diggs this season being that home run threat. But I think that now, you don't know who's going to be at the quarterback spot. Both those guys are going to drop severely stats-wise, and their stock is dropping constantly. So I think that's a big issue. As for Carson Wentz starting week 1 for Philly, I think it's a bigger boost to Ryan Matthews there. They got Cleveland in week 1. I'm actually in Cleveland right now. It's where I'm based out of. So I don't expect them to win a lot of games this year. I have them at 1-15. Offense can put up the points for Cleveland, but defense is terrible. If you look at last season, in 7 of the first 8 games, the opposing running back rushed for at least 90 yards against them. So with Ryan Matthews there, as long as he can stay healthy, which you say that with everybody, but with Matthews especially, if he can stay healthy and be on the field, now that DeMarco Murray is in Tennessee, I think Matthews is going to have a tremendous season. Maybe Jordan Matthews gets impacted a little bit, being that you have a rookie quarterback there, and they made a trade for Dorial Green back up as well. So, if anything, the 2 spots I think are going to rise the most for Philly, obviously Ryan Matthews in the running game, and then also maybe Zach Ertz in the tight end spot. Because like I said, younger quarterbacks, and look at Delaney Walker last year with Marcus Mariota. Check down, check down, check down. It was huge for Delaney Walker. I think that could be also huge for Zach Ertz this year.
Okay, what about Carson Wentz? A lot of people that I've been talking to have been saying he's maybe a good backup quarterback pick.
Yeah, I mean, in the offense, you're going to have, some good weapons there. Like I said, you got Jordan Matthews, you got Dorial Green Beckham, you got Zach Ertz, you got Ryan Matthews, Darren Sproles coming out of the backfield sometimes to catch the ball. I think Wendell Smallwood in deeper league is a guy you need to target as well, especially with someone like Ryan Matthews who could, get hurt, which he seems to get hurt at least once or twice a season. So I think that with that offense, I mean, here's the thing. You want to target teams that aren't going to do very well. Like last year with the Jaguars. They didn't do very well in the NFL eyes, but in fantasy owners' eyes, Blake Bortles was the 3rd best fantasy quarterback, only a 1.5 behind Tom Brady for 2nd best among fantasy quarterbacks. Allen Robinson put up double-digit touchdowns. Julius Thomas coming in the mix at the end. So obviously when teams are bad, they want to throw the ball because they're down by a lot. So for Philly there, if they're down by a lot, that means more passing. So I think that Carson Wentz could be a good option. I think, like I said, Cleveland's going to be terrible. RG3 could be a really deep sleeper pick depending on their matchups. So yeah, I think that in offenses where you know that they're not going to be winning by a lot or winning at all, I think it's good to try to target those offenses because, you know, they're going to be on the field, they're going to try to put up points through the air, and you can target their garbage time points.
A lot of questions now with Dallas's offense. Mark Sanchez now there in the wake of Tony Romo's injury. He'll be a backup for Dak Prescott. What do you make of their quarterback situation, and how do you think it affects their offensive players?
Let's just say that I'm a Denver fan, and I was thrilled that Mark Sanchez is not on the team for week one. If you look at his stats, in his best season, yes, I know he took the Jets to 3 straight AFC championships, but in his best season, he threw for 3,474 yards in 2011. And if you look at the Jets receiver stats for that year, Dustin Keller led all receivers with 815 yards, and as you know, he was their tight end. And then receivers like Santonio Holmes, Plaxico Burress. I mean, they had some receiver weapons on there, and they still could only max out at 815 yards for the number one receiver. So if I'm Dez, I'm praying that Dak Prescott does well and Tony Romo heals quickly because I do not want Mark Sanchez as my quarterback. If anything, it's going to boost the value of Ezekiel Elliott because he's got a great offensive line there in Dallas, and they're going to want to run the ball a lot so they can avoid the turnovers. I think that Elliott is the guy that's going to get the most production there. So I'm hoping for Dallas people out there that Dak stays as a quarterback because that means more passing to Dez. Because as you saw in the preseason, Dak led the NFL. Granted, it was just preseason, but still led the NFL in preseason passing yards. And as a rookie quarterback, that's pretty impressive. I don't really care who you are. And he also has a threat to run. You saw in Mississippi State. He was able to run the ball, and I think that having that dual threat, granted, he's got to understand the defensive ends in the NFL are a little quicker than they are in college. Something that Cam Newton had to adjust to a little bit when he went to Carolina. So if he just learns to stay in the pocket a little bit longer, look for Dez, look for, Jason Witten, maybe dump the ball out to Elliott, I think that it could be a really good start until Romo gets cleared. And his job really is to make Jason Garrett have a really tough decision in 6 to 10 weeks when Romo comes back.
Okay, another guy that is injured right now that is providing some questions, Jamal Charles. And the Chiefs have been very cautious with him. It doesn't look like he's going to start week one after tearing his ACL last season. He's a guy many people selected with their first pick. So any concerns on your end about taking him as a top pick if you still haven't drafted and he is available?
Huge concerns. I avoided him in all of my leagues this year. Whenever a guy's coming off a serious injury like that, and you know that they still haven't fully recovered, I know that news didn't really break until a day or so where he was, where Andy Reid said it would be a stretch for him to play week one. But still, if I'm going to invest a first or second round pick on a guy, I want to know he's going to be out there week one. So the only risk I would have taken would have been someone like Jordy Nelson where you knew for sure he was going to come back. So someone like Charles where they already had 2 guys in the backfield that did well last year, and Spencer Ware and Sharkandrick West, unless I knew for sure I was going to get one or both of those guys on my fantasy team as a handcuff, I probably would avoid Jamal Charles. So this week, and it's sad because they have a really good matchup in week one. They got the Chargers, and before the news was released that Charles was going to be out, I had Charles as my RB6 out of all the rankings for week one. So now that he's out, I'm not going to put Spencer Ware in that spot, but I will move him up significantly to probably the top 15. Because if you look at it, last year, Spencer Ware faced the Chargers twice. And in his first game against them, 11 carries, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. After that, in December, he faced them, 8 carries, 52 yards. So in that, he had 7.8 yards per carry in 2 games against the Chargers. Granted, the Chargers defense is a very strong defense, but I think that with Spencer Ware back there, you don't want to risk having Jamal Charles go out there in week one, knowing they have a long season ahead of you. So I would not be surprised if Charles starts to week one, maybe even week two, because in a 16-game schedule, you do not want your bell cow running back still battling injuries before he comes back 100%.
Right, well, you mentioned it. It looks like Spencer Ware is going to get the bulk of the carries now for the Chiefs. What does this do for his fantasy value? Is this someone that we can just try to pick up for 1 or 2 games, or do you think he's a long-term pick on your team?
I added him in a couple drafts late in the rounds, probably like around 14 or 15 if he was still available. But with that situation, I mean, they have Alex Smith at quarterback, so it's not like they're going to be throwing the ball, 50 times a game. So while I know they have Macklin and they have Travis Kelce there, I still think there's going to be a run-centered offense. So as much as Charles is out, that's how much I want Spencer Ware and Kendrick West. While I wouldn't invest too much in Ware being the guy from every single week, I think they're going to probably play a hot hand here. I still think that my colleague John Halpin always says, possessions 9/10 of the law. That proves the same for running backs as well. As long as they're the starter, you get to take it from them. And I think that Spencer Ware, if he's starting in the backfield, I want Spencer Ware on my team.
Okay, speaking of your colleagues, you guys all did this on the Fox Sports website. I thought it was pretty cool. It was 5 guys I'm drafting, 5 guys I'm not drafting. There are still drafts going on. The regular season hasn't started yet. So at this point, 2 days before the start of the regular season, for all the slackers out there who haven't made their picks yet, who are 5 guys you're drafting, or just a few of them?
Well, top of my list was Sterling Shepard for the Giants. You have Odell Beckham there, obviously, so I think you got to hope that defenses are going to put 2 men on him, leaving Sterling Shepard there and some one-on-one coverage. He was tremendous in his final year of Oklahoma, 86 catches for over 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns. It does worry me a little that they say that Victor Cruz is back to 100%, but I still think that Shepard's going to be the guy there, even in that kind of an offense. So he's the guy I'm owning in a lot of leagues. After that, Blake Bortles, who, for someone who was, like I said, the number 3 fantasy option last year in scoring, he went really low in draft. I know everyone's expecting a big regression from him, and I'm not saying he's going to put up 34 touchdowns again, because a lot of people are projecting the Jaguars to have a decent season. So just like I said, how you want a bad team to get a lot of garbage time points, and you have a team like Jacksonville who's going to be in a lot more games. They're going to run the ball more. They're going to have a better defense. So I think that in that aspect, yes, like Bortles may not have the same numbers as last year, but the way he was going in drafts, I mean, he was going as like the 11th or 13th quarterback in drafts, and really late. Like, people can take him as their main quarterback in a 12-team league and wait until like the 13th round, and I had no problem with doing that at all. So I think Bortles is a guy, and you can get good value with him. That's the guy I wanted to get in a lot of my leagues. And then I wrote this on August 12th, and the guy that I listed on there is still ringing true today. That's Kenneth Dixon for Baltimore. Granted, he will miss a handful of games with an injury, but no one knows what's going to go on in Baltimore in this running game right now. They cut Justin Forsett. I know they re-signed him today, but just having that kind of yo-yo approach to it, you got Terrence West, excuse me, and I think that eventually it'll be Kenneth Dixon's show in Baltimore. So I really like him as a really late ad. And then one more guy I really wanted to add is basically anyone on the Saints. I already hit on the fact they're going to put up a lot of points with Drew Brees. Just looking at their numbers, Brees has led the league in passing yards in 4 of the past 5 seasons, and the only year he didn't, he was in second place. So you know they're going to throw the ball a lot in New Orleans. You know there's a lot of good options there in New Orleans, whether it's Cooks or Snead or Fleener. And I think that, or even Michael Thomas from Ohio State as a rookie. I think that if you can get just one of those options, just get one lotto ticket for a New Orleans receiver and see how it pans out for you, I think you won't be disappointed.
Okay, the last question I have for you, we're looking at the long term with a lot of these questions, but a lot of people are interested in playing daily fantasy sports like DraftKings, stuff like that. So just looking at this week, who are some good players to target for your team?
Well, the strategy I take in DraftKings is go cheap on the running back, at least 1, maybe even 2, because it's basically the way I play fantasy football. I don't spend the high pick on a running back for 2 of them, at least maybe for 1 I will, but not for 2, just because, especially in the PPR scoring system like DraftKings has, you want to target the receivers more than you want the running backs. So I'm going to spend my money more on the running backs, or on the receivers than I would the running back spot. So I'm looking at the cheap running backs this week. We already mentioned Ryan Matthews. He's only 5,700 on DraftKings. Spencer Ware, 4,400. Whatever you can get a starting running back under 5,000, target that instantly. So I think Spencer Ware is going to be a great ad. And then I know the NESN listeners are going to love this. I have James White there, 3,600 as a running back. And it's for him, being the main pass catcher from the running back side of things in New England, I think if James White gets out there and catches, 5 or 6 passes, he'll be well worth the $3,600 price tag that he has on DraftKings. So with those 3 underpriced running backs, that allows me to get someone like DeAndre Hopkins against the Bears at $8,800, or Brandon Cooks against the Raiders at $7,700, or even Doug Baldwin against Miami at $6,600. So those are some of the guys I'm targeting. And then also defensively, go cheap on defense, guys. Don't spend a lot on defense, because who knows what's going to happen from week in to week out, especially in week 1. But what I will say is target the rookie quarterbacks. And that's why, or even the tough quarterback positions, like in Minnesota. So that's why I went with Tennessee. Granted, Tennessee is not the best defense out there, but when you're at home and you're facing a team that doesn't even know what their starting quarterback is, I'm going to take that as a pretty good bargain no matter what they're at. So they're only $2,600 on DraftKings. That way I can just get that out of there and worry about spending money on some bigger names. So that's just a couple of my DraftKings picks for today.
Okay, thanks so much, Adam. Great stuff from you. That's all we have for you for this week, at least. We'll be speaking to you more throughout the season, and we look forward to it. In the meantime, where can we hear more from you or read more from you?
I'll be on Twitter. Fox Sports Meyer is the Twitter handle there. So you can reach me directly. Obviously, I'll try to answer every question that comes to the site there. So hopefully, can answer all your questions. Also, on Sundays on FoxSports.com, we do a chat from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. where me, Halpin, and Foster are all in there for 1 hour at a time answering your start-sit questions. So I know that on Sunday, for people that want to kill some time before kickoff, they can go in there, ask us other questions, and hopefully we can get to them that way as well. So plenty of ways to reach us, and hopefully we can answer your questions and get that out there before kickoff.
Okay, thanks so much. Adam Meyer, Fox Sports. Appreciate you tuning in.